Salam Sejahtera and welcome to another edition of Perception, where we discuss current issues of daily topics of concerned discussion among multicultural Malaysians of all walks of life. Ladies and gentlemen, our discussion topic today is entitled, Is Umno Anti-Rakyat? To deliberate this subject, we have with us Yang Berhormat Dr. Zulkifli Ahmad, who is the Honourable Member of Parliament for Kuala Selangor. YB, it is indeed an honour to have an enlightened intellectual and critical parliamentarian to be with us on this edition of Perception.
Thank you for your gracious word.
YB, the current political landscape is largely based on the will of the Rakyat, who were disgusted with UMNO's brazen abuse of power and gross economic mismanagement of the country. It was the will of the Rakyat that denied Barisan Nasional its two-third majority in Parliament and retired them in Kedah, Penang, Perak and Selangor by voting Pakatan Rakyat as the alternative government of Malaysia. Despite the affirmative and resounding will of the Rakyat, Pakatan Rakyat is continuously harassed and intimidated when it comes to hosting Meet the People gatherings. Is this not tantamount to utter contempt and disrespect for the will of the Rakyat?
Right, I think you have put it so vividly, and in fact the preamble to the question to me explains, in a nutshell, that the Prime Minister Najib Tun Razak, despite being given a bloody nose in the 12th GE, is in a way in a state of denial, and that is most and extremely regrettable. And UMNO and Najib have not really learned much by way of the tsunami that affected them, that befall them in the last GE. And if I can quickly answer your question directly though, if you look into specifically the voting pattern or the popular vote enjoyed by the opposition in the last general election, and particularly in West Malaysia, in Peninsular Malaysia, it goes beyond 50%. And UMNO was only salvaged by the fact that Sabah Sarawak 57 plus 1 Labuan seat, 58 parliamentary seat, provided them almost the savior. Otherwise, in West Malaysia, the popular vote dwindled to only 49.8, 49.1%. So, viewed from that perspective, UMNO it would have been appropriate for them to immediately understand that the way of running the country with impunity, transgressing fundamental liberties as enshrined in the Federal Constitution in Article 10, wouldn't be the way to go forward any longer, and that they should respect the voice of the people, which has now come to be what is known as the voice of the real owners and stakeholder of democracy. But then even up to now, you find UMNO still in denial and denying the right to assembly, the right to free and equitable access to the media, which of course is against the primary and cardinal principle of democracy. access to media, especially media that are paid by taxpayers' money. The RTM, the both electronic and print are media that must be serving the rakyat as a whole, serving the government of the day and His Majesty opposition. That should be the attitude. But of course, you don't see that in Malaysia, because we are continually denied. And even our ceramah, our political assemblies, now in many states are confined in markas. Very rarely do we have a chance to be, having a crowd away from outside markas, and as if they are trying to, as if they are saying that yes, we fear your ceramah because we pull in crowds, thousands of them, especially if our heavyweights are around. So access to media is still in the old state of affair. Political assemblies are denied time and time again and harassed by the police force, by the PDRM, and time again you have occasion where there's a big of conflict and confrontation because speakers are not allowed, especially if the opposition chief and top leadership or PAS or DAP or Pakatan is to have, if they were to have political assemblies like that, ceramahs, trail and circuit, there will be a big, almost like a big fight with the FRUs and the police. So this is most regrettable, extremely deplorable, and we want to see a more level playing field. And the rakyat will insist on that. And that is a message of the GE, the 12th GE. And sooner rather than later would be better for Najib to understand this. But he is still in the state of denial.
YB, it is generally perceived by Malaysians and the world at large that in succeeding Tun Abdullah Badawi as Prime Minister after the 12th GE, Dato' Najib has in essence not got the mandate of the Malaysian electorate. All he has is the mandate of UMNO. Is that the reason why he is perceived as pro-UMNO and anti-Rakyat?
I would say in short, yes, certainly, because he is quite desperate to prove a point that he is a Prime Minister of the Rakyat. But as you said quite correctly, he has come to be on the helm, on the premiership, essentially because Abdullah Ahmad Badawi gave way, obligingly, or whatever sinister procedure that you would want to dwell on, gave way to him. And he is now seen as most desperate, most frantic to get to be bestowed the approval of being mandated as the Prime Minister of Malaysia, the 6th Prime Minister of Malaysia. And for as long as the general election is not on, he is still a Prime Minister on the mandate of what was the courtesy of Abdullah Ahmad Badawi, of which he I wouldn't want to use booted out, or he has through very crafty way get him to resign. But now he is in persona, and in fact in his style and construct as a leadership, almost aping, if I would like use the word, the flip-flop and the penchant for flip-flop and the flip-flop kind of personality of his predecessor, of his immediate predecessor. And that is again extremely regrettable, again, if I may use the word. And it will be again will it be a case of a legacy of lost opportunity? Because as you correctly say, that he should immediately move from being serving and self-serving to UMNO alone to the bigger constituency of the Rakyat. And because of that, he is seen as anti or anti-rakyat. And this, in the last 3 years, in the 12th parliamentary session, of which he has now been as the PM for about almost 2 years now, he hasn't really improved markedly, though. He tried to, rhetoric-wise, but when it comes to action, he flip-flopped time and time again, and that is so obvious and evident, and no person of an upright frame of mind as Malaysians, especially analysts, couldn't notice that, and this is again something that Najib must immediately improve, and otherwise is really going down in the way of Abdullah Ahmad Badawi, a case of a legacy of lost opportunity, because there's been too much of rhetoric of one Malaysia. I hope I can dwell on this, and exactly and what he represents is the exact antithesis of all his big sounding rhetorics and slogans.
When it comes to slogans, in his first year of leadership, it was people first, performance now. How does this slogan weigh in with the compromising of all the institutions that are supposed to be independent and totally anti-rakyat?
Again, I would like to say that, as if when he rhetorises all this slogan, he is not quite aware of what it takes to realize this and execute these slogans. To me, the slogan "One Malaysia" is quite okay if it's not perfect, but then he doesn't seem to quite understand what it takes to really realize the vision of One Malaysia, because One Malaysia is not going to be good for narrow-minded UMNO leadership or warlords stuck in the construct of Malay supremacy. The Malay supremacist kind of mindset is not going to go down well with One Malaysia. One Malaysia is a very all-inclusive rhetoric or slogan that would really bring up our country as a nation, with all its plurality, with all its differences, and yet we can construct it to be one of a dynamic demography of racial, religious, cultural. But when he goes down, when he takes that road and that path of celebrating or not going against the ultra Malays of UMNO, and particularly the fighter dog of UMNO, which is now Perkasa, and harping on Ketuanan Melayu or the Malay supremacist rhetoric and doctrine, he destroyed himself. And right now he's caught in a quagmire at a crossroad, because even Perkasa is saying that One Malaysia is against the federal constitution of Article 153 and whatnot. So Najib is really caught. He's caught in that crossroad of going into inclusivity and pulled back by all those affirmative mindset of Malays under siege kind of mentality. And Malay under siege kind of mentality are essentially racial extremists and practicing religious bigotry. And bigots cannot have One Malaysia.
YB, we will take a short break now. To our respected audience, I trust you will be with us when we return to continue our discussion. Is UMNO Anti-Rakyat? With Yang Berhormat Dr. Zulkifli Ahmad, the Honourable Member of Parliament for Kuala Selangor.